Today we're going to be analysing the manipulative behaviour of Fiona Harvey in a recent Piers Morgan interview, as well as analysing some of her body language. I'm a behavioural psychologist, but I am not trying to armchair diagnose anyone. As far as we know, Fiona Harvey has not been diagnosed with any type of personality disorder or medical condition, but there is a correlation between personality disorders and stalking, especially with females. It's borderline personality disorder has the highest correlation, but that doesn't mean that everyone with a personality disorder becomes a stalker and vice versa. If what we've seen in Baby Reindeer is true, although a lot of it hasn't actually been proven with court documents or verified, if it is true, it's pretty obvious that Fiona Harvey is very mentally unwell and we should extend empathy and compassion whilst also holding her accountable for her behaviours. And lastly, I hope the media put in as much effort to out Richard Gadd's rapist as they did to out Fiona Harvey. Alright, there's nothing left to it but to do it, so let's get into it. I will be using Piers Morgan clips from that interview as examples throughout. Projection. Projection is a defense mechanism typically used by manipulative people in an attempt to protect and guard their self-esteem and ego. So with these kind of people, on the surface, they can seem very confident, very sure of themselves, quite grandiose, but that kind of hard exterior or confident exterior hides something very fractured underneath, which is the self-esteem and the ego, which is actually very small, very fragile, very easily dented. For them, projection involves accusing other people of the things that they themselves are either feeling, thinking, doing, saying, even characteristics of their own personality. They will accuse other people of these things. So it's a way for them to deflect blame, to shift blame off them, and to not take any accountability for any possible negative attributes or things that they've done. They just shift that on to someone else, because if they do take accountability, that would damage their ego, would damage their self-esteem. So at all costs, they will never do that. They will avoid doing that as best as they can. Projection can also be used as a means to control other people around the manipulative person. So it can basically just be a way to get people to do what they want when they want. If it's done repeatedly, the person it's being done to can actually start to believe the things that are being projected onto them. As with all of the manipulative tactics that we'll discuss, it's important to note that for all of them, a lot of the time, the manipulative person will actually be completely unaware that they're engaging in this manipulative tactic. Because remember, it's a defense mechanism. Often it's just like a subconscious thing. They're not actually aware that they're doing it. Some are though, but it's not, I don't think it's as common as those who are not aware. There are actually loads of examples of projection in the interview, so let's check them out.
What do you feel about Richard Gadd?
I think he's psychotic, and I think that anyone going along, being in that play and doing this to somebody, I find the behaviour outrageous.
So you can see in that clip that she's accusing not just Richard, but everyone that's involved in the play as being outrageous. Their behaviour is outrageous, and as Richard being psychotic, which ironically is what most people will be saying about her behaviours, that she seems psychotic, she seems outrageous. So she's projecting her own attributes from her own behaviours onto not just Richard, but various other people.
Have other people from the pub contacted you?
Nobody's contacted me.
No one at all?
About this at all, apart from the media, the mainstream media and stalkers on social media.
So she's trying to project that she is now the one being stalked, even though she is accused of being a stalker.
Yes, on the 18th of December, please go and see Richard Gadd's show. It's well written and neurotic.
Yeah.
The filmed bum shots are the best. Fantastic ass.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
But
we were trying to encourage him.
Nothing negative though about it there.
No, because I didn't think he was a complete psychopath who was going to attack me in this way.
Projecting that Richard Gadd is the psychopath, when that term, although I don't agree with it, has actually been thrown around a lot to describe her.
Yeah.
He says, Richard Gadd, he didn't see you as a villain, but as somebody who is unwell and needs help.
Yeah, well, he maybe should look a bit closer to home, to himself, as someone who needs help.
What, you think he's mentally unwell?
Yes, I think he always was. Whether there was an alleged rape or whether that rape was real or conceived in his mind, I think that would make him more.
I mean, that's a rape.
Again, same. We all clearly know that this woman needs help, and she's accusing Richard Gadd of needing help.
Mrs. Ray said she was so frightened she issued workers at her firm with personal alarms. You were then served an interim interdict to stop you from contacting the lawyer or her politician husband? Daily Record reported that.
She messed up, I know, and I've still to speak to David about that, the author of that Daily Record article. She didn't. She messed up because I went into the Court of Session, the High Court in Edinburgh, to get countrywide interdicts, an interdict and an injunction in Scotland and England because I was going to move to London anyway. She mucked up.
Sorry, you went into court to get them yourself?
Yes, but there was
who?
no need, against Laura Walker and Ginny Ray.
That's an interesting one. She is trying to project that she was the one that actually filed an injunction against the MP and his wife for their unacceptable and rude behaviours, when in reality it was actually the other way around.
And you've been emphatic in the number of denials you're making here.
That's right.
But many of those things that I've put to you can be proven.
You're talking about emails and an email trail thing.
All that.
You know, all of that. You're obsessed with... sorry, I don't mean to be horrible.
I'm not obsessed with anything.
You
I thought that was quite funny. She accuses Piers of being obsessed with all of these calls and emails and texts, when in reality, if it's true, what in Baby Reindeer, she was the one that sent over 41,000 emails, hundreds and hundreds of Facebook messages and voicemails and letters, handwritten letters, but she's accusing him of being obsessed.
I can just rebut what has been said. You need to make up your own minds. But my mind is made up. He's a liar. And my friends say likewise.
Again, accusing him of being a liar when it's actually her that is the liar. An example of another manipulation tactic that can be seen in the interview is something called word salad. Word salad is a type of deflection which the manipulative person uses as a tactic to avoid usually talking about something or doing something that they've been confronted with. Because remember, they don't ever want to take accountability, so they're going to try to get out of that by any means possible. And a word salad typically can be a little bit confusing and kind of bamboozling, because they'll talk about something that doesn't really make a lot of sense for the context of the conversation. And then the person they're saying this to kind of gets sucked in, and then they lose track of what the original point of the conversation was, and then it's just gone off topic, which is what the manipulative person wanted, because then they're not taking accountability for the actual original purpose of the conversation. So in the first example, Piers asks her a question if she had ever been arrested, and she says, no, never. And then she quickly changes the topic to how she doesn't appear or sound like the actress, which is really irrelevant compared to that question. That's such a serious question that you would want to, if you hadn't actually been arrested, you'd want to really focus in on that and prove that that wasn't true. But she quickly answers it and then completely changes topic to how she doesn't look like the actress, which is completely irrelevant. Like, who cares if you look or sound like the actress? You're being accused of something that you are saying you didn't do.
Have you ever been charged with a criminal offence?
No.
Never?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
So that scene is completely invented?
That's completely false, and I don't think the actress sounds like me. I mean, people compare me to Lorraine Kelly, but I look nothing like Lorraine Kelly. We all happen to have dark hair and we're Scottish. You know, I think the actress is from Glasgow, I think, but I'm not sure.
But and which part of Scotland are you from?
I'm from the Central Belt.
So a slightly different accent.
It's slightly different.
A Scot would know the difference.
A Scot would know the difference, a Glasgowite.
And you can see how Piers actually gets sucked into this distraction, and then he starts asking her questions about it, like, oh, a Scot would know the difference between the accent and where are you from and blah, blah, blah. So that's an example of how he actually got sidetracked. The next example is probably one of my favourite ones, just because it's so ridiculous. So he says to her, basically, people will think you're a liar, and she says that she never lies and she only tells white lies if she absolutely has to, which is complete bollocks, really. Everyone tells white lies on average. I think it's a few white lies that everyone tells every day. It's just what we do as humans. But she tries to claim that she never ever tells them unless she absolutely has to, and then she just goes on this big tangent of this silly lie, and it doesn't again make any sense in terms of the context of the conversation, what she's been accused of. It's just off topic completely. So it's a perfect example of what a word salad looks like, just trying to divert the conversation. And it does kind of work because, again, Piers listens to it. He doesn't interject and say, like, sorry, this isn't really like relevant to what we're speaking about. Let's speak about, back to the actual case at hand. You're being accused of all of these horrible things.
Could it be people to be asking this, watching you, thinking either she's genuinely innocent here or she's a terrible liar who is capable of all of these things?
I don't lie, and I tell white lies if I absolutely have to. Like when my 94-year-old ex-neighbour was dying, we all knew she was dying, and I'd phoned her in the hospital the night before, and I lied and said, have a good sleep, everything's going to be fine, and that, so I'll tell a white lie like that when somebody clearly needed some rest. And
the next example of a manipulative behaviour is downplaying their own behaviours, or rewriting history can be another kind of version of this one. So essentially, if a manipulative person has done something completely unacceptable, whether it's in a relationship or friendship, work, whatever, they will often try to make their own behaviours that were unacceptable seem like that it wasn't that big a deal, and you're almost kind of crazy for thinking that it was a big deal. So she does do this quite a few times. Let's take a look.
Different email
easier,
accounts.
maybe 4. I think it's 4 to 6. Yeah, it's
Was it four-
easier.
4 or
it's
6?
easier. So you have some for your utilities, some for close friends, whatever. Yeah,
The 6 is a lot.
is it?
I don't know anybody with 6 email addresses.
You don't know many people then. I know people with 4 or 6 emails
Right.
address.
Or was it 4 or 6?
I can't remember. Probably 6.
I've never met anyone in my life that has 6 email addresses and 4 phones. That's not typically normal, like unless possibly you're a drug dealer or something, you've got 3 burner phones. But for a typical person, nobody has that many phones. Not that I've ever come across. That isn't typical behavior. But she tries to make it seem like that's very normal, and he's almost the crazy one for not doing that himself. Like, he obviously doesn't know enough people because he's never seen anyone else do this. So essentially, trying to make him feel silly for something that she's doing that is clearly abnormal.
Do you think if somebody did send someone 41,000 emails, 350
I think that's
voice messages,
excessive, obviously, yeah.
would that mean someone's stalking someone?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it could be could be your wife. It could be you're maybe sending emails every day about the kids or something like that. I don't know. 41,000 is a lot. That's how many a day? My maths isn't working this time of night. But it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean they're stalking somebody. They could be great friends. They could have been friends for 50 years or something.
She downplays someone sending thousands and thousands and thousands. Well, I think it's 41,000 emails. She tries to downplay that and say, they could have been friends. There's not one friend in my life that I've ever had where I have sent them 41,000 emails. That's crazy. So she's trying to, again, downplay her own behaviour and make that seem normal. And he's almost abnormal for kind of even asking the question or suggesting that, that's kind of crazy that you'd send that amount of emails or messages or whatever to somebody else. The next example of a manipulation tactic is belittling their victim. The purpose of belittling is to make their victim feel like shite, basically, and to attack the victim's self-esteem and their self-worth. So they start to doubt themselves, they feel less than, they feel like the manipulative person is superior to them, is just a better person than they are. And that can really eat away at someone if that happens over time again and again and again. This can either be subtle or it can be quite obvious. Typically in relationships with a manipulative person, again, whether it's friendship, romantic, work, whatever, it would start subtly and then it would build its way up and then it becomes a bit more in your face, kind of more direct.
In the pub. And he's working behind the bar, Richard Gadd, and he offers you a cup of tea. Is that what happened?
No, that's not correct. He didn't offer me a cup of tea. Nobody gets anything free from the Holy Arms. I was in for a meal with a drink of lemonade and I was very, very hungry. I'm diabetic, so very hungry. So that's.
And did you talk to him?
He interrupted a conversation. There was another barman there, and he said, "Oh, you're Scottish," and basically commandeered the conversation. I was talking to somebody. It's pretty rude to interrupt. So he seemed to be obsessed with me from that moment onwards.
So that's a little example of actually 2 combined. So she belittles him by saying he's rude for interrupting. Again, in a pub, I think that's fairly standard. Like, people interrupt each other all the time, especially barmen, just for the banter, the chat. But she also gets to throw in there like, oh, he was obsessed with me from the very start. So that's actually an example of belittling and projection combined.
He'd failed as a comedian, he'd failed as an actor, and therefore, let's make some money, sell this to Netflix.
So belittling his career, he failed as a comedian, he failed as an actor.
Mrs. Ray said that she gave Aberdeen University law graduate you did graduate from Aberdeen?
Yes.
With a law degree? A trainee role at the legal firm McPhail Lawrence Partnership in 1997. Is that true?
It was called L&L Lawrence. I think she forgets the name of her own firm. It was called L&L Lawrence.
Another belittling there, saying that Laura forgot the name of her own firm, which obviously she did not forget the name of her own firm. I think she would know if anyone was to know. But that was an attempt to make her look like a fool, basically.
So you've never married?
No.
Have you had relationships
boyfriends, yeah,
with men? I mean, if you don't mind me being pure,
I'm heterosexual.
Yeah, I mean, how many relationships have you had?
I told the staff that relationships were out of bounds. A lot more than Richard Gadd has, I would say.
I mean, he had a lot.
Quite a few.
Right.
A subtle belittlement there, basically saying that, you know, Richard Gadd could never have partners, or he could never get with anyone, compared to her, of course, because she's had loads.
By his own admission, he has said that he led you on at times. And he clearly
I gave him the brush off. He asked me to sleep with him with a big green spot in his face one day. I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
He asked you to do what?
He asked me to sleep with him. He said, would I like my curtains fixed? And I laughed. And he said, that's a euphemism. Do you want me to come home with you? And I said, I've got a boyfriend. I gave him the brush off big time, I think. You know, it was subtly so.
So she gave him the brush off big time, but also subtly so, which doesn't even make sense. You can't have both of those things combined. You can't do something big time, but then it also to be subtle.
No, but the bottom line is, I think this is behind him. No, I don't fancy him. I don't fancy little boys without jobs.
That's kind of self-explanatory, but also interesting because he did have a job. He worked at the bar, and she didn't have a job right then. She didn't have a job, but he did. So that one actually also combines projection, because at the time she had no job. He worked in the bar, and she's trying to belittle him for not having a job. It doesn't even make sense, but there you go.
No. Can I ask a question? Do you happen to know how much he's made out of this Netflix thing?
I would imagine several £1 million.
Yes, I would say 3 to 4 million. A lawyer I know well thought he was a wee nobody, and he suggested 750 to 100,000.
A wee nobody. So that's an example of a subtle one just kind of thrown in there. And it wasn't even her. She's saying like, oh, a lawyer that I know said this. Like, it's not even just me that thinks this of him. It's somebody else too. And now some body language, which I always find very interesting to analyse. Just some really basic ones that I think jumped out at me when I watched it. So there are often times where she will say like a positive affirmative statement, which is like a yes. She's saying yes, but she's nodding no at the same time, which indicates deception. So her body, unaware to her, is actually leaking out the truth. So there's quite a few examples of this. Let's check them out.
A lot of sexual innuendo.
He did say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you could prove, I guess, quite easily it wasn't you.
Correct.
Because it'd all be on your computer.
Yeah, correct. That's right.
Would you be happy for someone to look at that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So you can see that was a blatant no. He asked her, like, would you be willing for somebody to look at your computer? And she's like, yeah. So that's a dead giveaway that she would not be comfortable with anyone looking at her computer.
Over a year.
According to you, there's only a handful.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, how long would that take someone to type up?
How many do you think you sent him?
A handful.
Like
a handful?
She even knows it's not true. A handful? So her body knows that's not true. It was not a handful. It was a lot more.
41,000 emails.
Yeah.
When she looks to the side and she does this, that's contempt.
Do you ever shout out at comedy shows? I don't know. People
No, I don't generally go to comedy shows.
I don't generally go to comedy shows. So that lets us know she does go to comedy shows. She does generally go. And the leakage is the nod while she's saying a negative statement. Like, I don't generally go, which should be like this. But she's saying, I don't generally go.
Did you ever turn up at his house?
No, I don't know. I don't know where he lived. No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So she's saying a really affirmative, like negative statement, like absolutely not. And she's nodding yes as she's saying it. So when you think yourself, if you're saying like absolutely not, your head naturally, it does the shake to no. But that's leakage. So she's saying her body is telling us what actually happened.
It turns out that 41,000 emails did come from a device belonging to you. How would you feel about that?
I wouldn't be suing if I thought there were 41,000 emails out there.
You understand how easy it is to find them.
I understand completely.
I understand completely.
I don't think she does understand completely, because she does actually do a no motion when she says, like, I understand completely. I'm not sure if she is fully aware how easy it would actually be to gain access to those.
If it came to it, would you take a lie detector test?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you take a lie detector test? Yeah. That one's pretty self-explanatory. No, she would not take a lie detector test, is what her body is telling us.
And
How many times did you meet Richard Gadd?
don't know,
What would you guess?
5, 6, maybe 5, 6 times.
That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe 5, 6 times.
It's quite subtle, but you can see the 5, 6. She goes like 5, 6, and then it kind of turns into, when he says in your life, then she does the affirmative yes nod, because it isn't the full question of, oh, you only met him 5 or 6 times in your life. She's just answering to the in your life. So she's able to kind of lie through that one. So with those head nods, if you want, it's actually quite interesting to go back through the interview, and you can see the times where she is saying something truthfully, and she's saying the positive affirmative statements and saying, like, nodding yes, and it looks like she's telling the truth. There are times when I believe what she's saying, and they're quite a contrast to when it seems like she's not telling the truth and she's saying positive statements but shaking her head no, or saying negative statements but nodding her head yes. And lastly, this is just some examples of words that she uses that contradict each other, doesn't really make a lot of sense, or they're non-affirmative for what she's saying. So she's been accused of some pretty horrific things, but she uses words like quite flowery language, like, oh, I don't think I sent that many, I'm not sure, like stuff that if you knew it was true, you wouldn't use language like that. You'd be 100% certain as to what you did or didn't do.
Because it's a vast number.
Well, there's a huge number, and voice messages. The voice messages he's kept apparently, and there
He
is
was maybe taping me in the holy arms. I don't know if he's got any voicemail.
But if he has 350 voice messages and it's you,
it doesn't mean the drama is true.
Piers puts it to her, if he has, over 300 voice messages and it's you, her response is, it doesn't mean that the drama is true, which in reality, if that wasn't true, off the bat, you'd be like, that's not true. I've never sent those. That's absolutely insane. Why would you start talking about the drama being true or not, but saying that the 300 and, 50 voicemails is true? She's indirectly admitting that she has sent hundreds and hundreds of voicemails, but trying to also say like, oh, but the other things in the drama are not true, but I did do these things. That's kind of like a subtle way of her actually admitting that.
You sound unconvinced, but
I'm not. Honestly,
what?
No. So is your point that are you challenging him to reveal this evidence?
No, I would challenge him to leave me alone.
She's not challenging him to reveal the evidence, and she actually says no, she doesn't want him to do that because she knows that it's true. Anyone in that situation, if it wasn't true, you'd be like, yeah, let's see it. Like, I want to see these supposed messages, audios, emails. I never sent them, so let me see what the hell you've got going on there, because it's not me, and that's going to prove that I'm innocent. But she doesn't want him to reveal those. So that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
The whole drama needs to be true. They have billed it as a true story, so has he, and it's not. It's blatantly not. Even if the email thing was true, the rest is not. So
why would you qualify that, Fiona?
Sorry, why would I what?
Why would you suddenly qualify even if it's true about the emails?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Right.
Even if the email thing was true, the rest is not. So now she's admitted to, I think it was the voicemails earlier, wasn't it? The 300 of those. And also, even if the email thing were true, so over 40,000 emails. So I think her argument at this point is she's trying to say that some of the things in the documentary were true, but other things weren't true. So that means the whole thing is void, which isn't obviously the case. That's what I think is happening.
I think he's done bloody well out of defaming
Do you resent that?
I don't resent any Scot getting on. This is not what this is about.
How can you not resent someone making probably millions of your suffering and misery, of you being completely outed to the world as being a stalker, a crazy woman, a psychotic, in need of help, blah 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 blah. As she said in her own words, that now she is supposedly being stalked and she's getting like bullied and harassed online. How could you not resent a person for putting you in that situation? That's just insanity. And again, I think the reason why she says that is because she knows that what he says happened, what Richard Gadd says happened, is actually the truth. All right, so that was a lot to take in, but I hope you found it interesting. One of the things that I think is interesting as well is the lack of emotion in the interview. She doesn't get upset. She doesn't seem particularly hurt about it, or the like the focus that's been on her, all of the negative aspects of her life. She mentions it, sure, and like says it, but the emotion just isn't there. Like I'm not feeling that that this has devastated her. Like for example, at the end when she addresses the camera and speaks about how it's affected her life, she kind of goes on a tangent about saying like everyone needs to make up their own mind about what happened. But if you try to picture yourself in that situation, I know that's probably hard, but surely your speech would be like more focused on what's happened to you and everything that you've been feeling. Like, he's ruined my life. This whole show has absolutely ruined my life. I'll never be the same again. I can't believe he has done this to me. I've been outed on a worldwide scale. My life will never, ever be the same. I cry every day, every night. You know what I mean? Like that's what I would imagine a person in that situation would be will be saying and doing. Obviously, everyone reacts differently, but it just seems a bit odd that there's not much emotion at all. Okay, I will leave it there because this video will take a million years to edit. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!